All right, so ready to tackle some serious philosophical heavy lifting. Excellent. Today, we're diving into the mind of John Scottus, Eriugena, 9th century thinker who's way ahead of his time. We've got excerpts from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy to guide us. And let me tell you, this stuff is dense.
It certainly is. Eriugena isn't exactly light reading, but that's what makes him so fascinating. We're talking about a period when Western Europe was just beginning to rediscover the intellectual treasures of the ancient world. And here comes Eriugena, fluent in Greek, diving headfirst into the works of Eastern Christian thinkers like the Cappadocian Fathers and Gregory of Nyssa. He was like a bridge between two worlds.
Okay, so I'm picturing this Irish scholar holed up in a French monastery poring over these ancient Greek texts.
Yeah.
What kind of ideas was he grappling with?
Well, one of his major projects was creating a system of Christian Neoplatonism, and at the heart of this system is a truly mind-bending cosmology. Eriugena believed that God, whom he describes as this unknowable, infinite force, emanates into being and then ultimately draws everything back into himself.
Hold on. So we're talking about God creating himself. That's not your typical Sunday school lesson.
It's more nuanced than that. Eriugena uses this striking phrase, nothingness through excellence, to describe God. He's not saying God is literally nothing. He's trying to convey the idea that God transcends our categories of understanding, even the very concept of being. God is so far beyond our grasp that even calling him being is limiting.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this guy had a reputation for being a bit radical.
Yeah.
So if God is this nothingness through excellence, how does creation even happen? How does something come from nothing?
That's where his concept of the four divisions of nature comes in. It's outlined in his major work, Metaphysics, which translates to On the Division of Nature. He argues that nature can be understood in these four categories: nature which creates and is created, nature which is created and does not create, and finally nature which is neither created nor creates.
Whoa, that last one, nature which is neither created nor creates, that's a real head scratcher.
Mhm.
And where does God fit into these categories?
That's the key. The first category, nature which creates and is not created, that's where Eriugena places God. It's the source of all things, the uncaused cause, the ground of being. But remember, even this language is ultimately inadequate to describe the divine reality that Eriugena is trying to point to.
Okay, so we've got God who is nothingness through excellence as the first division of nature. What about the other three? How do they relate to this idea of creation?
Well, the second division, nature which creates and is created, is where things start to get really interesting. Eriugena says this division represents the primordial causes, which are like the blueprints of all things existing eternally in the mind of God. Think of them as the archetypes, the perfect forms from which all created things derive.
Okay, so it's like God is the architect and the primordial causes are the blueprints for the universe.
Yeah.
What about the actual stuff of the universe? The stars, the planets, the trees. Where do those fit in?
That's the third division, nature, which is created and does not create. These are the created effects, the things we experience in the world around us. But here's the catch. Eriugena doesn't see these created things as separate from God. They are, in a sense, emanations from the divine expressions of the primordial causes. He's careful to emphasize that creation isn't a one-time event, but rather an ongoing process.
So creation is more like a flowing river than a finished product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this river flows from the first division of nature through the second and into the third. But it doesn't stop there. Eriugena envisions a return, a redditus, where all things ultimately flow back to their source, back to God.
Okay, we've got God, the primordial causes, the created effects, and this idea of return. What about that fourth category you mentioned, the one that's neither created nor creates? Where does that fit into all of this?
That's the ultimate destination, the final merging of all things back into the divine unity. It's where the distinction between creator and created collapses, where the river flows back into the ocean of God's infinite being.
So it's like a cosmic dance with everything flowing out from God and then ultimately flowing back.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, this idea of the return of redditus is central to Eriugena's whole system. It's not just about individual souls going to heaven. It's about the entire cosmos participating in this grand movement of return to the divine source.
My brain is definitely starting to feel the stretch here. But before we move on to the return, I want to circle back to those primordial causes for a second. You mentioned that they're like blueprints existing eternally in the mind of God. But does that mean they're static, unchanging? Or is there some dynamism to them too?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Eriugena's unique approach to Neoplatonism. He wasn't content to simply adopt Plato's theory of forms wholesale. He wanted to integrate it with his Christian understanding of a God who is not only perfect and eternal, but also dynamic and active.
So he wasn't just borrowing ideas from Plato. He was wrestling with them, trying to fit them into his own theological framework.
Exactly. And one way he does this is by emphasizing the relationality of the primordial causes. They're not just these abstract, isolated forms floating around in some ethereal realm. They exist in a dynamic interplay within the mind of God, and they also have this inherent outward-facing quality, this drive to manifest themselves in the created world.
So they're both eternally present in God and constantly seeking expression in the world of created things. That's a pretty amazing balancing act.
It is, and it reflects Eriugena's deep conviction that God's being is not static or self-contained. It's overflowing, it's creative, it's constantly seeking to express itself in the richness and diversity of creation.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly dynamic conception of God in creation.
Right.
But where do we fit into all of this? What's the role of humans in Eriugena's cosmic drama?
That's where things get really interesting. For Eriugena, humans occupy a unique place in the cosmos. He sees us as a microcosm of creation, a mirror reflecting the divine image. Remember that phrase, image and likeness of God? It's not just some poetic metaphor for Eriugena. He takes it very seriously.
Okay, so we're like miniature versions of God reflecting the divine attributes. But doesn't that contradict the idea that God is nothingness through excellence? How can we, with our limited minds and bodies, possibly reflect something so utterly transcendent?
That's the paradox at the heart of Eriugena's anthropology. He argues that just as God is unknowable in his essence, so too are we. He uses the term apophatic anthropology to describe this idea. We can't fully grasp our own nature, just as we can't fully grasp the nature of God.
So we're all walking mysteries even to ourselves. That's a pretty humbling thought. But how does this connect to the idea of humans being made in God's image? It seems like we're both like God and completely unlike God at the same time.
Exactly. And that tension, that paradox, is precisely what makes us human. For Eriugena, our capacity for knowledge is one of the key ways we reflect the divine image. But this isn't just about accumulating facts or mastering logic. It's about participating in the divine act of knowing, which is ultimately a process of unknowing.
Okay, now you're really messing with my brain. How can knowing be a process of unknowing? It sounds like a contradiction in terms.
It is, in a way. But remember, we're talking about Eriugena here, the master of paradox. He's trying to express something that's ultimately beyond language. For him, true knowledge involves a recognition of our own limitations, a willingness to surrender our preconceptions, and to encounter the mystery of God.
So it's like the more we know, the more we realize we don't know. It's about embracing the unknown both in ourselves and in the universe.
That's a great way to put it. And this process of unknowing, of encountering the mystery, is what ultimately leads us back to God. Remember that concept of redidus, the return. It's not just a passive process of being drawn back to the divine source. It's an active participation in the divine life, a process of becoming more fully ourselves by realizing our profound connection to God.
Okay, so we're all on this journey of return, this process of becoming more fully human by realizing our connection to the divine. But how does this work in practice? What does it mean to actually live out this apophatic anthropology?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Eriugena's practical ethics. For him, living a good life involves cultivating virtues like humility, love, and compassion. But these virtues aren't just about being nice or following rules. They're about aligning ourselves with the divine flow, with the movement of redidus.
So it's not just about doing the right things. It's about becoming the right kind of person, a person who reflects the divine attributes in their thoughts, words, and actions.
Exactly. And that transformation involves a constant process of self-examination, of recognizing our own limitations, of surrendering to the mystery of God and allowing that mystery to work in us.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of the depth and complexity of Eriugena's vision. But there's one thing I still haven't wrapped my head around. How does Jesus fit into all of this? We've talked about God, creation, the return, human nature, but where does Christ, the incarnation, come into play?
That's a crucial question. And for Eriugena, Christ is the ultimate example of redidus, the embodiment of the divine-human union. He uses these fascinating terms inhumanatio and incarnatio to describe this process.
Okay, those are some big words. Break them down for me. What do they mean?
Inhumanatio refers to the process of God becoming human, the divine word taking on flesh in the person of Jesus. But Eriugena also talks about incarnatio, which is the reciprocal process of humanity becoming divine.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that humans can become God? That sounds a bit heretical even for Eriugena.
It might sound that way at first, but remember, for Eriugena, the distinction between God and creation isn't as rigid as we often imagine. Creation is an emanation from God, a manifestation of the divine. So in a sense, we already are divine, even in our fallen state.
So it's not about becoming something we're not. It's about realizing something that's already true about awakening to our inherent divinity.
That's a great way to put it. And for Eriugena, Christ is the model for this awakening. He shows us what it means to fully embody the divine human union, to live in complete harmony with the divine will.
Okay, so Christ is the archetype, the perfect example of what's possible for humanity. But how does this process of incarnatio actually work? What does it mean for us to become more divine?
For Eriugena, it's not about becoming all-powerful or omniscient like God. It's about participating more fully in the divine life, about reflecting the qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom that are at the heart of God's being.
So it's about becoming more loving, more compassionate, more wise. That
Yeah.
sounds a lot like what we were talking about earlier, about cultivating those virtues.
It's all connected. For Eriugena, the path to rededitus, the return to God, is also the path to becoming more fully human, more fully alive. It's about realizing our true nature as beings who are made in the image of God, who are capable of reflecting the divine light in the world.
This is all incredibly profound and inspiring. But I have to admit, I'm still struggling with the practical implications of all of this. What does it actually look like to live out this vision of rededitus? How do we take these big cosmic ideas and translate them into concrete actions and choices?
That's a crucial question, and it's one that Eriugena himself grappled with. He believed that true spirituality isn't about escaping the world or withdrawing into some private realm of contemplation. It's about engaging with the world, about bringing the divine light into the darkness, about working for justice and compassion in all spheres of life.
So it's not about retreating from the world's problems. It's about rolling up our sleeves and getting involved, about being agents of healing and transformation.
Exactly. And for Eriugena, this engagement isn't limited to any particular sphere of activity. It can manifest in our relationships, in our work, in our political involvement, in our care for the environment, in every aspect of our lives.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all comes together. It's like Eriugena is offering us a vision of a fully integrated life, a life where our spirituality isn't compartmentalized, but rather permeates everything we do.
That's a great way to put it. And you know this vision has profound implications for how we understand our role in the world. We're not just individuals pursuing our own private happiness. We're interconnected threads in a vast and beautiful tapestry of divine love. And we have a responsibility to contribute to the beauty and harmony of that tapestry, to weave our own unique threads into the grand design.
That's a beautiful and inspiring image. But let's be honest, it's not always easy to see the world through that lens, especially when we're bombarded with so much negativity, so much division, so much suffering. How do we stay connected to that vision of divine love and interconnectedness when the world around us seems to be falling apart?
That's a challenge we all face, and it's one that Eriugena himself acknowledged. He knew that the path of redditus isn't always easy. It's a journey that involves confronting our own shadows, wrestling with doubt and despair, and navigating the complexities of a world that often seems far removed from the divine light. But he also believed that even in the darkest of times, even in the midst of suffering and loss, the divine love is always present, always working to draw us back to itself.
So it's about holding on to that faith, that trust in the ultimate goodness of creation, even when things seem bleak.
Exactly. And it's about cultivating practices that help us stay connected to that source of goodness practices, like prayer, meditation, contemplation of nature, acts of kindness and compassion. These practices help us to remember who we truly are, to realign ourselves with the divine flow, to find that still point within the storm where we can access the peace and joy that are at the heart of reality.
Okay, I'm feeling a renewed sense of hope and possibility here. But I have to admit there's one aspect of Eriugena's thought that I still find a bit unsettling. We've talked a lot about the return to God, about merging with the divine source. But what happens to our individuality in that process? Do we lose our sense of self, our unique identity, when we merge with the infinite?
That's a question that has haunted mystics and philosophers for centuries, and it's one that Eriugena addresses with remarkable subtlety and nuance. He doesn't shy away from the paradox of the situation. How can we both retain our individuality and merge with the infinite?
So how does he resolve that tension? Does he believe that we lose ourselves in God or that we somehow retain our individual identities even in the midst of that union?
Well, for Eriugena, the key lies in understanding the nature of the divine unity. It's not a monolithic, homogeneous oneness where all distinctions are obliterated. It's a unity that embraces diversity, a harmony that's composed of a multitude of voices.
So it's like a choir, where each voice contributes to the beauty of the whole while still retaining its unique tone and character.
That's a beautiful analogy, and it captures the essence of Eriugena's vision. For him, the return to God isn't about becoming absorbed into some kind of cosmic blob. It's about realizing our fullest potential, about expressing our unique gifts and talents in a way that contributes to the harmony and beauty of the whole.
So it's about becoming more fully ourselves, not less.
Exactly. And, this vision of Redditus has profound implications for how we understand human relationships. Because if our ultimate goal is to participate in the divine unity, then our relationships with each other become incredibly important.
So it's not just about our individual relationship with God. It's about recognizing the divine spark in everyone we encounter and treating each other with love, respect, and compassion.
Exactly. And, this vision of human relationships as reflections of the divine unity has profound implications for how we understand community social justice and our responsibility to care for those who are marginalized or suffering.
It's like Eriugena is giving us a blueprint for a more just and compassionate world. A world where our relationships are grounded in love and our actions are guided by a deep awareness of our interconnectedness. But before we go too far down that road, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the idea of creation as an ongoing process. We talked about how Eriugena saw creation as this flowing river constantly emanating from the divine source. But does that mean creation is never finished? Is it always changing, always evolving? And if so, where are we headed? What's the ultimate destination of this cosmic journey?
That's a question that has fascinated philosophers and theologians for centuries,
Yeah.
and it's one that Eriugena himself grappled with. He believed that creation is indeed an ongoing process, a dynamic interplay between the divine and the created. And while he didn't offer a specific roadmap of where this process is headed, he did offer some tantalizing hints about the ultimate destination. Yeah, he did. He believed that the ultimate goal of creation is deification, which he saw as a process of returning to God or Redditus.
Okay, but we've talked about deification before. Isn't that just about individual souls merging with God?
That's part of it, but Eriugena's vision is much grander. He believed that deification encompasses the entire cosmos. It's about the whole of creation returning to its source and participating in the divine life.
So it's not just about us going to heaven. It's about the entire universe becoming divine.
Precisely. He envisioned a state where the distinction between creator and created collapses, where all things are united in a perfect harmony of love and understanding.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for us as individuals? Do we lose our sense of self in this grand cosmic union?
That's a great question, and it's one that Eriugena wrestled with. He believed that in deification, we don't lose our individuality. Instead, we realize our fullest potential. We become more truly ourselves by participating in the divine life.
So it's not about becoming absorbed into some kind of cosmic blob. It's about each of us shining brighter as we become more connected to the source of all light.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, this vision of deification has profound implications for how we live our lives.
Okay, I'm all ears. How do we practically live out this idea of cosmic deification?
For Eriugena, it starts with recognizing the divine spark within ourselves and in all of creation. It means treating every person, every animal, every plant with reverence and respect.
So it's about extending that same love and compassion that we hope to receive from God to everything around us.
Exactly. And it also means working to heal the brokenness of the world, to fight for justice, to care for the environment, to create a world that reflects the beauty and harmony of the divine life.
So deification isn't just some abstract theological concept. It's a call to action, a challenge to make the world a better place.
It absolutely is. And what's really inspiring is that Eriugena believed that we have the power to do this. He saw humans as co-creators with God, as beings who have the potential to bring about a more beautiful and compassionate world.
That's a powerful and hopeful message. It suggests that even in the midst of all the challenges we face, there's reason to believe that a better future is possible.
I believe there is. And, as we delve deeper into Eriugena's thought, we discover that this journey of deification, this process of cosmic transformation, is not something that happens in some distant future. It's happening right here, right now, in every moment of our lives.
So it's not about escaping the world or waiting for some kind of heavenly reward. It's about finding the sacred in the ordinary, about transforming our everyday lives into a sacrament of love and service.
Beautifully said. And Eriugena's vision of the world as a theophany, a manifestation of the divine, invites us to see every encounter, every experience as an opportunity to connect with the source of all goodness and beauty.
It's a call to live with a sense of wonder and gratitude, to appreciate the beauty of the natural world, to cherish the gift of our bodies, and to treat all beings with compassion and respect.
Well said. It's about recognizing that we are all interconnected threads in the grand tapestry of creation, and that each of us has a unique and essential role to play in the unfolding of the divine plan.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Eriugena's ideas are certainly challenging, but they're also deeply inspiring and hopeful.
They are. He reminds us that even in a world that often seems dark and chaotic, there's a deeper reality, a divine love that's always present, always working to draw us back to itself.
And that's a message we all need to hear, especially in times like these. Well, that's our deep dive into the mind of John Scottus Eriugena. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we did.
If you're eager to continue exploring, we encourage you to seek out Eriugena's work for yourself. It's a journey that's sure to challenge and reward you in equal measure.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration of your sources.